And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
You know, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Dom Gocher.
how well did that go down?
We can talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at preneurmedia.tv.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of PreneurCast with me, Dom Goucher, and him, Pete Williams.
Hey, how are we all?
Hey, pretty good over here.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
You flew back from Spain to London town in time for the royal arrival. Very patriotic of you, mate.
Oh, yeah, I live my life that way. Not. Did it really get all the way over there? I mean, were you guys all going crazy over there? Because it just went crazy over here.
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
I think even throughout the US it was a bit crazy as well from what I heard. It's just, big news when a royal baby is born. It's quite interesting this day and age, but very, very cool.
Well, it must have been big news because even I heard about it. I have a very thin grasp on the real world. Well, at least the popular culture stuff anyway.
Luckily, we're not talking about the cricket and the Australia versus England series at the moment. I think the Queen is having a fantastic month with the Tour de France win and the cricket winning and the rugby test we just had and obviously the baby. She's having a fantastic month.
All right, okay, that's all that ordinary stuff done. Let's get out of that.
All right.
I thought we'd have a little themed show this week, Mr. Williams.
Love it. I love a good theme.
A good theme. We're halfway through the year. In fact, we're past halfway through the year now. But I started the year with my little foundation series of podcasts where I talked about things that I think everybody should have on their mind, things that you should be paying attention to, just general concepts, things that we talk about all the time, just reminder stuff. Very well received, even though I do say myself. But if you haven't listened to those folks, now would be a good time because it's that summer holidays time. Well, in all the normal parts of the world anyway, Pete. I realise over where it's not quite summer. Haha. But large parts of the world are taking breaks, summer breaks, and it's a time to take time off, put your feet up, catch up with things, whatever. So first of all, I'm recommending that you go back and have a quick listen to those foundation podcasts. But really, what I'm getting at here is I want to introduce something, and we could do this at the end of the year for people in your part of the world as well, Pete. The Summer Book Club.
I love it.
This idea of recommended reads. Now, we do recommended read or listen every week. We've started doing that again. We talk about Audible for audiobooks, our recommended audiobook people. But I just want to kind of focus in because I've been doing this a lot lately. I've been talking to people and I seem to be recommending the same 3, 4, 5 books. And I'll start a conversation with somebody, consulting client or whatever, and I'll say, hey, have you read XYZ? If you haven't, I really recommend you read that. And then we can talk more regularly, more easily on a topic. So I'd like to kind of talk through those 4 or 5 books that I recommend, but I'd also like to get your input on anything that you would recommend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a very similar conversation earlier this week with a couple of girls from the Deakin University philanthropic department who was sort of chatting to me about a whole bunch of stuff due to my position with the advisory board and stuff. And one of the questions that came up in our conversation was also, what books would you recommend people read? So it's a perfect timing for even in the Southern Hemisphere.
Cool. I mean, I'm going to say, hopefully, none of these books are a surprise to anyone that is a regular listener of PreneurCast. From my list, I'm not going to bring anything out of the woodwork. I'm not going to surprise anybody. And I'm really hoping everybody's read these at least once. If you haven't, then I really do recommend and remind and nudge and whatever. This is an accountability thing, folks. Get yourself away, get yourself a copy and read these. Pete, I know you're always on the leading edge of this stuff and you're ahead of the game. So I'm hoping you are going to surprise people with some stuff. So that said, let's get right into it, because once we start onto this, we might kind of wax a little lyrical. Now, I'm doing these in order, okay? This is like the order. It's like if you haven't read these in this order, I would read them in this order, and I'm going to try and explain why, if that's all right.
Sounds like a good plan.
Cool. So my first book, and it was pretty much the first book I talked about extensively on PreneurCast, is E-Myth. Right? Now, the reason why I'm putting this first is because it puts down a lot of foundational knowledge and concepts for me. It was one of the first books of its kind that I read, and it set a lot of things in motion for me personally. And I think it's an easy start. It's well written as an easy read to just flow through and learn a lot of the basic concepts that we talk about all the time. But that I still see people making these mistakes every day in any walk of business. You know, this book is the origin of concepts such as don't work in your business, work on your business, and about setting up systems. And it walks through the transition that I think a lot of people go through, which is this from being the mechanic, the person that does the work, to the person running the business that really shouldn't be doing the work anymore and should be hiring people in to do it. So that to me is a foundational book. And I think if you haven't read it, I think it is important that you read it and grasp and understand those concepts. What do you think?
Yeah, completely agree. I know a good friend of mine, Mike Rhodes, who runs one of Australia's leading AdWords agencies, Web Savvy, is a huge fan of that book, and also did a whole bunch of additional training and certifications with Michael Gerber around that. And I do think that it's a pivotal book, particularly for people. I think it would make the most impact for people who are really good on the tools and are just getting started in business. So you may have done an apprenticeship. The example he sort of uses throughout the book is about a bakery. So you may be a really good baker and can make amazing coffee scrolls and different sort of eclairs and stuff like that. But you've never really run a business before, and it's a great book to kind of see the difference between being a mechanic, as we call it, and a business owner. So I think that's a really important book for everybody, but particularly those type of entrepreneurs who are just starting out, coming from a trade background as such.
Yeah, and you make a really good point there, actually, which is that it is applicable, and this is something I'm going to come back to with all of these books. They're applicable to everybody at any stage, from somebody who's like got a job thinking of starting a business, somebody at college looking what they're going to do, thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, starting their own business up, somebody that's in their business but isn't getting the results that they want. All those people, this is applicable stuff. There's something in here for everybody, whether it's seeing a path to follow before you start, so you get yourself off on a good start, or whether it's just getting a bit more direction and seeing a way out of the situation you're in. Definitely, for me, that's top of my list.
Love it. Very cool. Well, my list is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to throw out some books that we probably have touched on the show, but maybe not, that I think are a little bit left to centre, that are definitely worth checking out. So my stuff's slightly different. And the first one I want to suggest is a book called Love Yourself. Now, I'm going to completely screw up the author's name, unfortunately, but I think it's Kamal Ravikant. So Kamal is the first name, and the surname is Ravikant. And the book's called Love Yourself. Subtitle is Like Your Life blah 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 blah. Like Your Life Depends on It. And it's a really short little Kindle book. And it's a really interesting book. It sort of talks about the power of affirmations, but in a really la weird kind of way. And I think it's a fantastic, easy read that I think everyone should just take, the $7 or $8, whatever it costs, to buy the Kindle book and have a quick read of it, because it's a really interesting take on the power of affirmations and why you want to sort of incorporate that into your life in some area, in some way.
Cool. I actually read that. I can't remember who recommended it to me, but I did pick it up on a recommendation. I read it. I enjoyed it a lot. I think the term you were looking for was woo woo.
There you go. That works.
Yeah, because it's not, and I don't talk about it a lot, but I am actually into the more psychological aspects of personal performance and things like that. And so this is a big thing. That the idea of affirmations is a big thing in that. And if you're not totally convinced by this idea of positive affirmations, let me frame it differently for you. Thinking negative thoughts really is not very good for you and not very good for your success and progress. And so affirmations is just the opposite of that. It's a way out of thinking negative thoughts. It's not just woo-woo rubbish. It's just a way of dealing with something that absolutely everybody comes across at some point in their life. This idea of negative thoughts about just not looking positively upon a project or whatever. So yeah, that's a good recommendation, Pete. I like that.
A little bit different, but cool. Definitely worth a read.
Yeah, and by the way, folks, anybody that's having fun with Pete's pronunciation, don't panic. All the books are going to be in the show notes for the show out over on PreneurMedia.tv. You can go over and get the correct spelling of everything. No worries. We'll put links to the books and everything there. They'll also be in the show notes for the podcast if your podcast reader can read those things. But PreneurMedia.tv is the best place to go to get all the supporting material for the show. So, beautiful. My number 2. So if you've read the E-Myth, the next one along for me is Built to Sell. Now, Built to Sell, some people say, is incredibly similar to the E-Myth. I say it builds on what the E-Myth starts.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure.
Yeah, and I found this a pivotal book. I got so much more from it because I'd read the E-Myth, which is why I've put them in that order. But again, it's about running a business and about designing a business. It's almost like you get to the end of the E-Myth and he gives you a lot of things that you should be going and doing, but they're generic terms. He's like, you should systematize. You should work on your business, not in your business, and so on and so on. And they're all good advice. And if you can visualize what he's saying and come up with something that applies in your world, then the E-Myth is great. But if you can't, or you're struggling with it, or you just want a really pragmatic, practical example, Built to Sell is that, cover to cover. It's a story, a worked example. You know, in the E-Myth, you say he goes through this idea of a guy in a bakery. In Built to Sell, it's someone in the graphic design business, which I think is a great example because the graphic design business is an absolute potential minefield of draining, life-sucking horror clients. It's a great, wonderful business. If you're good at it, you enjoy it, it's a wonderful business to be in. But at the same time, it's such a minefield, all these potential dangers, that where you can get sucked into just this busy work and things like that. So it's a great example to base the book on.
Absolutely.
And again, he's got practical examples, gives a really, really good. I mean, a number of people that I've told said read Built to Sell, and they've got nothing to do with graphic design. It's got nothing to do with their business whatsoever. But they said, "Wow, I looked at that. I looked at the example. I can see an exact parallel in my business. I'm going to do that starting tomorrow. It's awesome."
Yeah, and I think for those who have read the book or haven't read the book, there's actually a conversation that John Warrillow, who's the author, so John and I had a conversation for the blog. So if you head over to PreneurMarketing.com and go back through the archives, there's actually probably an hour-long conversation that John and I had and recorded up about the book and about applying a lot of the concepts in your marketing and in your business. So definitely go to PreneurMarketing.com and check out the archives there of the blog.
Excellent. And I'll put a link there to that as well in the show notes. Great.
Very cool.
Got a counterpoint to that one?
Yeah, I've got a book that I've actually sent out recently to a whole bunch of consulting clients, and that I actually sort of, quite often buy books and send them around to people that I work with. And one of them was The One Thing. It's a relatively new book by Gary Keller, who started one of America's larger real estate franchise businesses, I think it is, to get it correct. And he's written a number of books now, but this one's his book all about the importance of, funnily enough, one thing, because I think it applies so much to people who are probably listening to the show. I know myself, some of our consulting clients, that you easily get distracted with opportunities and ideas. For a lot of people, ideas of what to do and opportunities to actually, take a course and apply that particular marketing strategy or whatever it might be, is abundant. You have so many of these. And, realistically, if you have more than one thing you're focusing on, you are, spreading yourself too thin, as the saying goes. And this book by Gary is a really great way of actually sort of seeing the downside of multiple projects and multiple tasks, and helps you really identify what it is that you want to stay focused on and the importance of focusing on just that one thing until it is automated, until it is systemized, like built to sell. Then you can obviously move on to that next thing.
Awesome. I mean, that book is actually on my reading list. I haven't read it yet. I feel bad now because you've mentioned it out loud. So, sorry, Gary, I'm going to go and read your book as soon as possible. But that book, to me, is a pivotal topic. That idea of focusing on the one thing. We previously have talked about this, the serial versus parallel when running projects.
Yes, absolutely.
And absolutely, I mean, I remember seeing somebody do a very brief piece on it. I'm not sure, I don't think it was Gary, but somebody did a very brief piece on it where they gave this worked example of the perils of working on parallel projects versus serializing the projects and achieving and solidifying a goal before you move on to the next one. So if that's your recommendation on that topic, I am definitely bumping that one to the top of the list. Yeah,
definitely get all over it.
Cool. Excellent. So,
you, mate, what's next on your list of summer book club reading?
Summer book club reading. I mean, and so far, I mean, the E-Myth, easy read, built to sell, easy read, really, no problem at all. Just you could quite happily sit there on your sun lounger or by the heater if you're down by Pete. Reading those very easily. The next one, a little bit deeper, but still not a particularly challenging read. Something I've talked a lot about recently, but I put this in number 3 in order of the order you should read these things, is The Lean Startup.
Yes.
Now, I've kind of waxed
lyrical. If I had $1 for every
before.
time you said that, I would be wealthier.
Yeah, you wouldn't be that much wealthier. But,
oh, mate, you've said it a lot, but I love it.
I know I've said it a lot, but hey, look, you pay attention to what's in that book, we'll all be wealthier. And that's my point. I mean, there's some absolutely fundamental concepts in this, and it's really important. And this is why I talk about it a lot, because one of the things about reading a book is if you just pick it up and read it, sometimes you might miss what's in it if you're not ready to be looking out for some key points. This is why I like recommending books. I love it when you recommend books, because it puts me on the lookout for those key topics. I'm ready to absorb them. I'm ready to apply them to my own business and my own world. Whereas if you're just reading these books, sometimes they might pass you by. And I said openly, I didn't pick up on the most important part of the Lean Startup for me until the second time I read it. But there's so many concepts in there. Things like this idea of minimum viable product, doing the smallest amount of work to test an idea, whatever it might be. Yeah? It's like, is this email going to be effective? Well, send it to 10 people. Don't send it to everybody on your list. Send it to 10 people. See if anybody does anything with it. Or send it to whatever the statistical viable number is. Is this change to our software going to work? Don't put it into the product cycle for 12 months and in 12 months test it as part of 100 things. build a prototype, show it to somebody, test it now, that kind of thing. But the other thing, which actually harks back to your recommendation for Gary's book, the one thing, is something called small unit size. Now, I haven't talked about this before, but small unit size is really another powerful thing. So many people try and do big things.
Yes, absolutely.
They try and do big things, and they also try, really good example actually, I'm going to just elaborate on this for a second, really good example he gives of stuffing envelopes. If you had 100 envelopes to stuff and label and address, or whatever, stamp, address, whatever, manually, most people would go through and they would get all the pieces of paper, fold them up. Then they would get all the envelopes, write all the addresses on. Then they would stick all the stamps on them. Then they would pick up their pile of stamped, addressed envelopes and pick up their pile of paper and stick the piece of paper in the envelopes, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Wrong. At that point, I was completely... It stopped me dead in my tracks because that's exactly what I would have done, and so many people that I ask say the same thing.
Yeah.
His point is, in terms of elapsed time, it's been proven time and time again to be minimally different between doing them one at a time, fold, address, stamp, stuff, done, versus fold everything, address everything, stamp everything, stuff everything. But the big difference is, if anything happens, if anything's wrong with your process at all, you won't find out until way, way, way down the line.
Mm.
If you do fold 100, address 100, stamp 100.
Yeah, you're getting feedback loops earlier.
That's exactly it. Feedback loop. That is exactly the words he uses. Feedback loop. Your feedback loop is much tighter. You find out sooner if there's going to be a problem. Because if you, again, using his example, if you fold your piece of paper, try and stuff it in the envelope, and the envelope's too small, you found out within 30 seconds of starting the job.
Mm.
If you fold 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 pieces of paper, and then you try and stuff the first one in the first envelope, you've folded a lot of paper the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's little things like that again, this book called The Lean Startup, you're thinking IPOs, you're thinking share buyouts, you're thinking all these big words that have got something to do with, the Silicon Valley and all that stuff. No, it's completely applicable to absolutely everybody. Mm. It's not a long book, and it's not, there's a lot of this IPO talk and investor talk and stuff like that, but it's still applicable, in my mind, still applicable to everyone. There's some very important lessons in that.
No, I completely agree. And as I've mentioned before, I only started that book, the audio version, probably about 2 weeks ago, and I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through it, because at the moment, for some crazy reason, I'm not following Gary's one thing, and I've actually got about 3 audiobooks on the go at the same time. So I'm about 2/3 of the way through that book, and I'm really loving it. It's been fantastic. Cool. All right. So again, my recommendation for the next book is, again, something I probably haven't mentioned on the show before, and something that I think is foundational, but probably different to a lot of people what they think. And it's a book by an American sort of, I'll call him a get-rich-quick kind of guy, or a property guy, but don't hold that against him. The book's called Money Secrets of the Rich by John Burley. If you're in the States, you probably would know him from some late-night infomercials. He used to, and I don't know if he still does, but used to do late-night infomercials selling real estate investing courses and stuff like that. So part of the Robert Kiyosaki sort of, I guess, inner circle, for want of a better term. But this book, Money Secrets of the Rich, is, I think, a great foundational book about learning how to handle your money, because it's a foundational thing that I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about, in that they think that, I'm going to start this business that's going to spit out so much cash, I don't have to worry about managing it. And I think that is a very poor outlook and a very poor attitude to have, because not only will that affect, obviously, your personal finances, but it also will affect the way you look at money inside the business as well. And I think it's important to make sure you spend wisely, you invest wisely, and you keep a good chunk of the cash. So this book it's a book that I read originally about 10 years ago. So it's an older book. There's an Australian version and there's a US version as well. So it sort of has rewritten it based on the different markets. But it sort of covers a whole bunch of stuff. The typical sort of stuff about, save 10%, tithe 10%, that kind of stuff. But also through a whole bunch of other areas about how to sort of, buy a car in a smarter way and how to start investing in real estate and how to do other stuff with your money as well. So I think it's a really good foundational book that everyone should actually read just to make sure they get that financial acumen so they can keep the money when they actually do start earning it from their business based on implementing all the really cool stuff that we share here on the show every week.
That's actually a really, really cool suggestion because, just to put my hand up and admit that it's passed me by, but we talk a lot about successful business. We talk about making your business successful. But there is that whole concept of, well, when it's successful, that means that money is going to start flowing through your business. If you're not accustomed to money flowing through your business, if you're not accustomed to having money, if you're not accustomed to it being in the business, then in a cruel twist of fate, it can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that a lot of people don't really think about, is that you have to actually manage the money in your business as well. It's not just about the marketing and the money coming in. It's like once it's there, you have to start thinking about that. And, for a lot of people who are sort of, starting out or the business is just growing, they think, I'll worry about that later. And that's a fair statement and a fair way to look at it. But I do think that you've got to at least have some of those foundations in place. And this is actually something that I'm working on as a series of essays for the blog under the title of Wealth Foundations. About getting that foundation correct and solid, so when the money does come in, you can have the control of it in the right way, and you can sort of touch on some stuff about how to sort of just get your finances. Because again, I think a lot of people come to our show obviously to grow a business, but a lot of them, I think, more and more as the bigger the audience gets and the community we have around this show grows, which is so fantastic. Just inevitably based on size and percentages and that sort of stuff, there is this growing number of people who are sort of coming along and sort of getting involved in our little community here as not necessarily a last-ditch resort to sort of be able to pay off the credit card and keep the mortgage under control, but there is that sort of people who are here just to sort of they need to make money now and they need to actually be able to pay next week's school fees, whatever it might be, which is a very sad thing because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to help people create a sustainable business, and that does take time. So I want to sort of at least touch on that for that part of the audience a little bit, and I think that book is a good starting point. John Burley's Money Secrets of the Rich.
Excellent. But again, it's applicable to everybody. And again, the audience segments that I talked about at the beginning, if you're just starting out, that's a great time. If you're just starting out, one of the things you're going to know the least about is having money.
Yes.
Unless you have a family member or a trusted advisor somewhere, close to you, you're only going to find out about money the hard way.
And it's not about saying, okay, I'm going to worry about this when I've made $1 million out of my business. It's, if you start having money come in to pay off your debts, well, what's the smartest and best way to actually chip away at those debts? There are, smart ways to go about it, and there are naive ways to go about it. So, in the book, it talks about, debt reduction strategies and how to actually do that, because for a lot of people, that's the first thing they're going to do with the cash that their business starts to produce, is actually start, not necessarily investing it, but paying off debt, which, is an important thing to do as well. And you want to do that in a smart, intelligent way too.
Cool. Awesome. Yet again, another excellent suggestion. And another one I'm going to put on my list. On the topic of getting large chunks of money, or just generally getting paid for anything, my next recommendation, again, something that I've talked about a lot, although I haven't talked about it for a while, pitch anything. And again, this book has a bunch of core concepts in it that are applicable to pretty much anybody in pretty much any situation. It's written by a guy. It's from a very specific perspective initially. If you look at it, pick it up and look at the cover, the book is written to go and pitch investment opportunities to big businesses. That's where this guy's background is. But it's really more subtle than that. It's more about putting across an idea, which is a form of salesmanship, is a form of marketing, which everybody who's in business in some way is going to have to develop these skills. Now, there's lots of specific books out there on marketing, sales, copywriting, all these different things, and we can pick up on that in future episodes, different specific topics. But to me, Pitch Anything is like a rolled up kind of kick-off startup sales course that covers things like really, really powerful things like framing, which is something that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
There's the importance of making sure that people understand where you're coming from. You understand how they're seeing what you're saying, so you understand where they're looking at you from, so that you can speak to them with the right language and say the right things. It's all the way down to what to include in a presentation, which could be the same as what to include in a sales video or what to include in a marketing letter. You can use these lessons all over the place. But it's a great, to me, it's a book that looks specific, but it is actually a great generic book with a lot of powerful tips and skills and tricks and things in it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely completely agree. We've, again, had Oren on various things at various times, so there's a whole bunch of stuff on the blog, again, with Oren and I chatting about some various pitching techniques and processes.
Yep. Cool.
Awesome. Okay, so I've got a couple other books here that I want to suggest and throw around. So one of them is a book that I actually got recommended when I was about 19 and joined Amway. Yes. I think a lot of people probably have done that at some point.
Wow, Dark Secrets.
Yeah, look, I was involved for a little bit. I think they called it A2K at the time. They were trying to do some online version of it anyway. It was all a interesting, journey at 19 years of age, kind of get swept up in the biz op kind of world, and that came across my my desk. But the book is called The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, and it's nothing to do with MLM or network marketing, but it was just a book that was recommended as part of the induction package, I think, to try and get people to dream big and things like that. But it's a fantastic book. I recommend, it's very rare that I recommend this, but get the physical book, not the audio version. Because I did download the audio version a few years back and listened to it, and it was very, very different to what I remember the written book being. So quite often they'll do that, where they'll actually make the audio book very different from the written book, which to more make it a compliment as opposed to a replica. So get the physical book. It's a great book, a whole bunch of stories about people who have been successful because they've thought big and dreamt big. So it's a really good little sort of, motivational book that I don't think I've mentioned on the show before, but it was one of my favourite ones early on.
Cool, and it's great to have these inspirational things as well as the practical advice. A lot of what I've talked about has been practical stuff, and some of the ones that you've talked about have been a little bit more around the edges. But it's great to have, just especially if you are starting out, because that's the other thing is that I've noticed that we are, as you say, the community is growing, and we are picking up quite a few people that are younger, that are starting out, in the entrepreneurial space. So it's good to have, role models, to have a vision, to have things to aim for, to just have some inspiration. So that's great. Yeah.
So, I think it's a perfect summer read by the pool. It's that kind of book. It's a fun, easy, light read, which is not too heavy for, on the cruise ship, on the beach, by the swimming pool, kind of thing, in the couch, in the window. Which is obviously what this show's all about, is summer reading.
If it's somewhere where you are. Now, I have a fifth book. Now, all these other books, these other four books, I totally say these are generic, and you should, in my opinion, read them in the order that I've presented them. So start with the E-Myth. If you've read that, read Built to Sell. If you've read that, read The Lean Startup. If you've read that, read Pitch Anything. If you've read if you read number 4 but not 1, 2, and 3, go back to number 1. Because I think they all will give you something from the ones further down the list as well. But my fifth book is a little bit more specific. Okay, it's my final of my 5. But when I opened up, I said 4 to 5 because the fifth book is specific. It's for people that have a services-based business. Okay, that either they are the product, or they sell services, or there's a lot of kind of personal interaction, and it is Book Yourself Solid.
Good old Michael
Port. Yeah, who was on the show recently, braving all manner of weather to give us an excellent interview. Now, I read the original Book Yourself Solid. I've also listened to the audio version. They are, point for point, the same. The one thing I will say with this is, I, again, would get yourself a copy of the physical book, because this is more of a workbook. All right? There are kind of, at the end of every chapter, he says, go do this.
Homework.
Right? And it is homework, but it's excellent homework. It's like, it's the equivalent of build your resume, or whatever it is, kind of when you're first starting out, you might go through a step by step to build a perfect this, that, or the other. And it's like that. I mean, the advice is absolutely fantastic. He's got systems. If you go back and listen to that interview, he's got systems and ideas and just strategies for dealing with everything to do with being a services-based business, with selling yourself or selling a service. He actually has, you'll hear people use the term elevator pitch. Yeah?
Yeah.
This idea that you can describe to somebody what you do in the time it takes to go a couple of floors in an elevator. So if somebody says, hey, what do you do? But he actually has a script, a fill in the blanks, say it this way, use it, frame it this way, say it this way, think about what you do and present it this way. If you actually read this example through, you work it through, it's a huge difference. Everybody I know who's gone through this, they used to, if you ever ask them what they do, you'd be there half an hour later and wishing for another drink while they finish off what they're trying to tell you, And I give them this. I said, just read that bit. Don't worry about everything else. Just read that bit, and instantly their delivery is improved, their confidence is improved, and they get instant results. It's such a powerful thing, and that's just one part of this book.
Very, very cool.
So yeah, if that's you, if you have ever to represent your company, your business, or you are trading on your own, you're a consultant, or you provide services, then I strongly recommend Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, I'll give you my last one. I'm actually going to sort of give 1.5. So I think Influence by Robert Cialdini, that's just a must read. So I'm not going to even, go any further than that, because I think if people haven't read that book, they are doing themselves, their wife, their child, their banker,
shame on you,
their butchers a disservice. Like, seriously, Influence by Robert Cialdini is just the must read. I was so lucky to have been recommended that book at about 17 years of age, and it's been a cornerstone of everything I've done. So that's a must read. But what I want to suggest is a book that's not a business book, not even close to a business book. It's Steve Martin's autobiography, Born Standing Up. And get the audio version. It's really, really engaging. And it's basically Steve's life story. And it's interesting because obviously Steve Martin is obviously known as, one of the greatest comedians, very successful, Mr. Everywhere kind of scenario. But it's interesting to sort of see what it took to get there. And the hard slog, because I think, again, people in this world who listen to our show, probably listen to other podcasts, are on newsletters, read a lot of, sales letters for marketing courses and programs and business opportunities. They sort of, get these rose-coloured glasses almost forced upon them based on the sales and marketing, that everything's going to be easy, buy this magic pill, you'll get the results, overnight success is guaranteed type crap. But it's really, really good to occasionally just step out of that world, that little vortex, and actually see what does it take to be successful. And, Steve Martin has to, be classed as, one of the most successful comedians of all time. There's no doubt around that. But it's just interesting to see how much hard work he put in, how many hours and hours and hours and struggle and effort and push and determination he had to have to actually crack that market and become, this successful comedian. So it's a really interesting story, a good laugh, but it, is definitely a must listen to, I think, just to get perspective again back every now and again. And again, I think summer is a great time to get that perspective and recharge the batteries the right way for moving forward for the rest of the year.
Cool. I like that. I'm a huge fan of Steve Martin, but again, to my shame, I haven't actually read or listened to that.
I actually, I was listening to it when I was training for the first Ironman triathlon I did when I was doing long, 3-hour runs and 3.5-hour runs. I put that on, and it was really enjoyable. It was fantastic. It's about 4 hours, I think, in total time. So it's a decent sized audio book, but is very, very cool.
Cool. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I laugh when you said about, people and these kind of forced rose-colored glasses and the things like that, but it's true. If you operate in the wrong circles, if you kind of, especially if you're kind of in this new world of information marketing, you can just get this idea that everything's easy.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, are infected by it, and that's why we have this problem where people think that just by getting a website, magically your business is going to be successful because you're now on the mystical internet and stuff, And it's work. Business is hard work, The internet has presented a lot of new opportunities and path to market to people, and there are a lot of barriers coming down to people getting started. But it's only easier to get started. I don't think it's any easier to be in business. It's, or be successful. All these things we've talked about, and especially the things you've talked about. You talked about things like, affirmations, keeping yourself positive, keeping yourself going, focusing on the one thing, being determined and making sure that you get that thing done, finished, and put away before you move on to the next one. Managing your money, managing the finances of the business. All these things, ironically, that you've talked about are those things behind the most fundamental things in business.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, I've talked about, the high level concepts, and the E-Myth and built to sell and structuring the business and running the business and making the business more successful by generating more clients and things like that. And that was really where I was coming from with these books. But your books are about the fundamentals. And that one, the last one, I think is probably the most powerful one because it's a very good point. And we have said this before. We're not lying to anybody here. We tell the truth. We tell it straight. It's hard. Yeah, you work hard and you get the rewards. People sometimes look at you, young, shiny, barely 30 years old, and think that your life is easy. But I know it's not. I know you've worked hard to get where you are, and you do work hard. You work effectively, but you work hard.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. And I'm like, I hope people don't sort of think that there's been any picture painted other than that, because it's, sacrifice a lot in a lot of different areas, and it's a choice I make. But the difference, I guess, is that I enjoy it. Like I do work hard, but I treat it as enjoyment. It's not hard work in the traditional sense of the word that people sort of, or the way people use that word. To me, it's like I work a lot, not hard. I work a lot. And I think that's the key thing is that I don't work hard, I work a lot. But I enjoy working a lot. So I don't know. It's 7:30 in the morning here right now, and I'm trying to think how to articulate that even better. But maybe you can sort of kind of put a better spin on that, Don. But I think it is working a lot, not working hard.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, to me, I've seen you work, and your work is focused, and your effort is focused. I see you put effort into things, so I say working hard. But what I don't see you do is I don't see you doing busy work. I don't see you working unnecessarily. And I think that's what, where people get this, can look at you and go, hey, I don't see him breaking a sweat. he's really successful. It must be really easy. It's not. You put a lot of thought into what you do. You've got all these systems that you put in place, and you've been at this a long time. I mean, you were talking there, being part of Amway at 19. That's you've been around for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to just to kind of a little bit overly serious on that bit. But I think it's important for people to realise. But hopefully, our little list of summer reads, there's something on there for everybody. There's something on there that you haven't read, or maybe if you have read them, then we've inspired you to go back and look at them again.
Yeah.
Like I did with the Lean Startup. Second time round, I got more out of it because of the other things that I'd read and the experiences that I'd had in the interim time. I could appreciate that a lot better the second time round.
Yeah. No, I think there are some key books that you should reread, at least every couple of years. Things like Influence, Pitch Anything, Built to Sell. There are certain books you want to pick up off the bookshelf and just reflick, if you're not going to reread the whole thing, but at least reflick through it and just kind of, get that spark again and you'll always see something a bit different.
Yeah. And, I'm personally, what I do is I tend to make notes. When I go through the things that stand out to me. Some people actually mark the books up. I write my own notes. Some people highlight in their Kindle, their electronic reader, whatever. It's one of the reasons I like to have physical books or electronic and read the book rather than have the audio. But even if I have the audio, I'll find myself taking notes and making those notes. And I do review those notes, which is just another tip. If you think that there's too many books to go through to be constantly rereading these old books, then make some notes. Cool. All right, well, folks, thanks again for listening. We'll wrap it up there, but I will say we're going to put this post on preneurmedia.tv as always. All the show notes, all the links to all these books, the names, the titles, everything are going to be on there. But I'd love your comments. If there's something that you think we've missed, something pivotal, something that made a difference to you, something that you think would make a difference to other people, drop us a comment below the post on preneurmedia.tv or leave us an audio on preneurmedia.tv with that little button on the right of the screen. We love those little audio feedbacks. Let us know. Let us know if we've missed a book. Let us know if there's something you think we should read, something, or if there's somebody that you think has written a great book that you think we should get on the show, because, we'll do it. We want to give you guys the best kind of shows that we can. And we want to, get stuff back from the community, give stuff back to the community. So give us your input. Now, as a quick reminder, as a PreneurCast listener, you can get a free trial with our favorite audiobook service, Audible, by going to audibletrial.com/PreneurCast. So if you want to get through these books in the easiest, quickest way, in the most convenient way, then obviously Pete and I both recommend that you get the audiobook version, and with the free trial of Audible, you get a free download. So if there's any of these books you haven't got, you want to try out Audible, now's the time to give it a go.
Fantastic. All right, guys. So another PreneurCast in the bag. Enjoy your summer. Enjoy your reading. And we've got another interview next week with another stellar author on another stellar book.
See you all next week.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Gocher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at preneurmedia.tv or drop them a line via PreneurCast@preneurgroup.com.